Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone. Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We're your hosts, Emily and Leanne from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Dr. Harrell Jordan about his journey and his work in this space. Harrell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get into your family story, we'd love for you to just quickly introduce yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. So as you stated, my name is Dr. Harrell Jordan. I'm a nurse educator and the founder of Career Compass LLC. So through my business, I offer things such as resume building or editing, as well as mock interviews, college readiness, career workshops, and even college readiness workshops as well. And through the lens of nursing, I do like NCLEX remediation, or I can do some consulting for universities who need assistance in that area as well. I have a history of nurse as a nurse educator, so I began this journey in nursing in 2013 and graduated in 2015. I've been an ER nurse since 2015, and I did that for about 5 years, west side of Chicago in the emergency room. If you can make it out west, you can make it anywhere. Chicagoland area. So I have a wealth of experiences, especially considering the master's education as well as my doctoral education. I got my PhD in nursing in May of 2023, where my dissertation was on the impact of masculinity on Black or African American men's preventative healthcare utilization. So that is a passion of mine to make sure that not only do I give back to Black men, but that I'm an example for others that look like me so that they know what's possible.
Great. Thank you so much for that background. Can you tell us a little bit about your family building journey? Where did it all begin?
Sure. So my wife and I got married in October 2017. We were newly married, and so we didn't make the decision to even start our journey for expanding our family until 2020. We used to say 2020 see the vision because the moment you get married, people start asking you, when are you going to have a kid?
Mm-hmm.
I just became a husband. Let me figure that out.
Yep.
So to that point in we knew some things already regarding health. So my wife had fibroids, like many African American women do. So we took the journey of having them removed in at the end of 2018. And we made the decision to start our process in July of 2019 to see if we can get the ball rolling so that we can hit that 2020 mark. Um, After 6 months of trying, we didn't have any results. And at that point, I knew that I needed to do my due diligence to see if there was anything I was doing or could be doing to help that process. So to that point, I went to the doctor in February of 2020, and I got results that told me by all intents and means I was infertile. So my sperm count was rather low and had a lot of abnormalities to it. And that started our journey for what fertility will look like for us. A lot of times you don't necessarily consider the man's role, let alone I'm a Black man. So I hadn't heard that from a Black man before. And wouldn't luck have it that this was the year of COVID. So when it was time for my follow-up appointment, it was canceled. They wouldn't allow anything to happen there. So now I'm just kind of in a slump. And it really took a toll on my emotional and mental well-being because I feel like less of a man. This is something I feel like I should be able to do naturally. And I'm not getting real answers because I can't see any doctors due to COVID. My wife and I kept trying naturally, but at a certain point, we had the conversation for IVF because we figured, hey, let's get some help here. Let's see what other doctors may be able to do to push us in the direction that we want to go. We are faith-based people. We're both Christians, and we definitely had God in the midst, but we wanted a baby. Like it's 2020. We've said this already. What's going on? So as we continued down that process, we met with an IVF clinic here in the Chicagoland area we started to have conversations around different medications that I could take, different medications that my wife could take to make her eggs as strong as possible and possibly increase the health of my sperm so that we can see what route we need to go. Then the world began to open back up a little bit due to with COVID. So around July of that year, I started having more appointments and we got ultrasounds. I was told that they wanted to do a biopsy to see if it could be cancerous. My blood work came back fine, so there was nothing hormonal that was preventing things, but there were still some abnormalities. Through the ultrasound, I found that I had varicocele. So those are blockages that weren't allowing my sperm to develop or make that transition the way that they should. So we made the decision to go through surgery. It was outpatient, very quick. That surgery occurred at the end of September of that year. Now, again, I went through with it because I know that I was gung ho. Whatever the process took, I was willing to do. I actually had more pause when it came to the biopsy because poking me in that area for cancer is something completely different than you figured out an issue that we could potentially mitigate. So I went through with the surgery and that also put IVF on hold. So in going through with the surgery, they wanted to get the results from that. So I started taking medications that they told me to take. We recovered and we waited until March of 2021 to begin the IVF process. Once we began, I had to give a sperm sample, and that sperm sample was worse than the first sperm sample that I gave.
Oh no.
Very disheartening, very
Yeah.
surprising. um, and it, yeah, it set me back a little bit because I've done things now and I've taken meds. I had surgery. What is happening? So we decided to wait so that we can have the healthiest sperm possible. We got a new sample later on, went through our first round of IVF. And after weeks and weeks of medication, we did find out that we were potentially pregnant. And what I mean by that is our HCG level had gone up, but it wasn't quite at the level that they would consider like confirmative. So we
Mm.
waited 2 days and it was supposed to double. It didn't quite double, but it continued to rise. We chased the HCG for over a week, hoping that it would continue to rise or double at some point. We got an ultrasound a few times to see if it had actually manifested into a baby. They sent us home with an ultrasound, saying congratulations. So I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Only for us to talk to our doctor 2 hours later to say, while they may have found a sac, there's no heartbeat. So disheartening there. We essentially ended that round, tried to recover, did another round. I must speed the story up. And in going through that second round, we felt like we were more prepared. We knew what to expect this time because we'd done it before and we were using frozen eggs as opposed to having to harvest them first this time for fertilization. We also tested the eggs prior this time. We didn't test them the last time. And through that process, I don't think I shared. Initially, we had 5 eggs. We used one for the first round. Once we checked the health of the other four for the second round, one of them didn't make it out of the frozen stage, didn't unthaw well. So we were down to three. Two of them were deemed abnormal. So we implanted the one egg that we had left, implanted that. We knew it was a girl because they did genetic testing, came up with a name, all the things. And ultimately, after going through it, our HCG didn't rise at all. So this time it was just zero, didn't take. So now I'm even more devastated because we did it all this time. We introduced acupuncture, cupping, healthier lifestyle. We continue to take the medication, exercise, further away from the results that we wanted. And to make a long story very short, this by that point it was about October 2022. So I'm devastated and I'm giving up. I'm thinking maybe that's not in our cards. That is not in the will for what God wants for us. Maybe we're meant to adopt. Maybe we're meant to foster kids. Or it was just not the timing. we tried some other things. We met with another doctor, and eventually in April of 2023, we went to Jamaica just for some us time right before I graduated with my doctorate degree. And we found out in May that we were pregnant naturally. Um, so timing is everything because maybe it was the stress of the program. Maybe there were some other things that were in the way, but we have all that honor to God because many doctors, many test results don't line up to the results that we got. And now we have our 2-year-old son, Elijah, and he is the joy of our life and he's terrific too. I'll just say that. So,
Thank you for sharing that story.
no problem.
I was really struck by the courage for you to test and to do a semen analysis 6 months into trying. I don't think we hear that a lot. And I think it takes it's a really important piece of the puzzle. So
Hmm.
having that information, I think, was helpful for for understanding to being able to make choices. Um,
Yes, you want to. I'm a person I like to be informed. So, and with all the work that I've been trying to do with Black men's health, I can't write articles about it and not do it. So, I'd already been going to the doctor, and he was aware of us wanting to plan a family in 2020. And he told me about, hey, after you've been trying 6 months, then you may want to see if there's other things that came into play. So, at the 6 month mark, I remember saying to my wife, hey, if we're not pregnant this month, it's me. So I'll go and get checked to see what I might be missing. And yeah, I didn't know it was that bad. So, but I'm glad I did it just to know. But ultimately, it didn't matter as much because we got the result.
yeah.
Yeah. But that just being that proactive, not just for you, but also for your care team. I mean, we've heard horror stories of people who tried for years. They were doing multiple IVF cycles. And after multiple failed cycles, that's when they started to do testing on a male partner and discovered, X, Y, and Z.
Oh, wow. So
And
I can
yeah,
even tell from that lens with our IVF doctor. I, although we came in with my own results, so we had them before we went to her. I would say they were kind of pushing to start, knowing what my condition was. She would say things like, we only need one healthy sperm. You have one. So let's go forward with it. That was even
yeah.
prior to the surgery. She said we had everything that we needed. We could just move forward. And I'm like, oh, well, I want to give us the best chance possible, make these as healthy as possible. So even though we did ICSI, that's where they actually picked the one sperm. Yeah, she was really gung ho. So that's interesting that they don't even consider the male in some senses.
It- yeah, it's very, from the conversations that we've had with people, it's very hit or miss. And it seems like there are parts of the country where everybody gets a workup if
Mm.
as soon as you show up. And then there are other parts where it's very unbalanced in terms of which partner is the focus of the testing, at least initially. So that's
Got it.
wonderful that wasn't your experience. But can you talk a little bit about how your journey affected your relationships, like with your partner, with your friends, with your extended community?
Whew. Okay. So I can't show up as my best self going through the emotional tug of war I was in during that time. So I'm battling who I am as a person. I'm battling with God, to be honest. And so if I can't even get this right, I was not presenting well to those around me. And the ones who reap those consequences the most are your partners. So my wife and I, in going through this journey, even though she had her own battles too, as I stated, she had fibroids. So despite having had the surgery in 2018, they came back. So we're both struggling. I'm struggling internally. She's struggling with things, and we're trying to figure out the best path forward. And both of us are actually nurses. So we are very health conscious. We are very in tune with things that you could potentially do or areas you need to look into to try to will it in a certain way. And in doing so, we had so many interventions, so many different strategies where we started battling, where it's like, I don't think we need to do that yet. No, we need to change our diet. No, let's change from Tupperware to glassware. Let's do, and it's like that back and forth was a lot in our home for years. And it took its toll on our marriage because uh, more than anything, our sex life, to be honest, because now sex isn't for pleasure, it's to procreate. And when you're not getting the result, you just get discouraged. But one thing I can surely say, that journey was nearly 4 years. And God worked it out in a way where neither one of us was down at the same time. We tried to compensate for each other. So when I was at my lowest, she was motivating and tried to stay positive. And then when she was at her lowest, I'd come out of mine so I could try to be there for her. But we also learned a few things with regard to the process of IVF and sharing with people. So that first round, we had a number of people involved for prayer, like support us through this journey. We'll let you know how things are going, etc. And in that first round, especially when we got to the point of HCG levels, now people are kind of asking for or waiting for an update regarding what those levels are, but we're battling whether or not this is a thing. So having to have those conversations multiple times in the process also took its toll to the point where the second round we went through, we didn't tell anybody. We isolated ourselves. We did it alone. And I think we may have individually decided to talk to one person, maybe two, just so we had someone for support. I ended up talking to a coworker who was going through a similar situation, and she was very respectful of the process. She didn't add extra pressure to it. It's important to have those individuals in your life too, where it's like, I want this really bad. I don't need to also feel how badly you want it from me or feel like I need to update you. That makes this even worse. Um, so it was an emotional roller coaster. And I haven't even talked about the hormonal portion that comes with that as well, with everything you're injecting yourself with, and the anxiety of needles played a role with us too. So it it wasn't a favorable journey, but we learned a great deal from it. An avid believer in nothing's wasted because despite what our journey looked like, now I have the opportunity to share my journey with others so that it's not as uncommon and the same pitfalls could potentially be avoided.
I'm really glad you brought up the process for you of sharing with other
Hmm.
individuals and people, because I don't think that's something people think about as they start to embark on this process. And I have also heard very similarly where sometimes it can be very helpful and therapeutic to tell the people what's happening in your life. But then at the same time, that can feel really hard when everyone wants an update and everyone's asking you. And now you have to deal with the disappointment of how you're feeling, but now you have to share that disappointment outward. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's something people can think about up front now and maybe make a decision on
Hmm.
which way they want to go. Um, yeah.
Yes, my probably, and I'm sure my wife would agree. My biggest piece of advice would be limit the number of people you tell.
Mm.
Everyone doesn't have to be privy. It doesn't matter how close you feel to those individuals. It's an emotional strain between you and your partner, let alone when you add someone else to it. Now you feel kind of not only linked to, but maybe even responsible for their feelings. So now I'm trying to make you feel comfortable with the fact that we're not pregnant. I
Yeah.
don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able, I want to be able to process through my own feelings, not make you okay with what happened and tell you that I'm okay. It, it's a lot. So you got to be selective in the individuals that you choose to let into this process because you may or may not get the results you're looking for.
Yeah. Sort of along those lines, did you find a community or an organization that you found helpful in supporting you through this?
I did not. I did not search. I'll be honest in saying I didn't search for one. So I felt like an anomaly. I felt like no one could relate to what I was going through, not because I'm a man, but more particular because I'm a black man. I'd never heard of this from the black male perspective. So I didn't even decide to search for support groups for it because I'm handling this internally and God needs to fix this because I don't feel well just with me. So, and there were times I was upset with God because in the midst of this, as grueling as this process could be, life in itself is still happening. So, and it's COVID. So, COVID's going on. We're both nurses. I was working in the ER sporadically. My wife was a full-time ER nurse. So, that emotional strain was also there. In addition to job changes happen on my end, church changes happen between the two of us. It's a lot. My wife, on the other hand, did look up support groups through like Facebook channels and things of that nature. And I think that there is a higher propensity of support for women in particular, especially when it comes to fertility. And I think that's just because society often puts the pressure on the woman when there are issues. And that's not always the case. And truthfully, it's probably that is more of the men, but we're just not looking. So.
And I think, I mean, we have a group for men, but if you look at the whole landscape of fertility and family building support groups out there, like groups specifically for men to connect and talk about this are maybe in like the tens or 20s compared to the hundreds of groups that exist between, different organizations and social media that are focused more on the female perspective.
Right. Right. So the fact that they're only in the tens for men, I would gather because it's similar to my own thoughts. I don't know who else is even going through this. I have never heard of this from the male perspective. I don't know to go look for a support group on it because it these people don't exist around me. I'd heard of fertility issues overall, and majority of the time it was something happening on the woman's side. But even with the hundreds of groups that exist for women, not that all of them necessarily have actual male partners, but I would gather some of them, the male is going through something too. Why didn't that group exist, or why didn't they pursue that group as well? So I would also start to see like random things based on our journey on TikTok because the phone kind of listens to you. So I started seeing that more and more during that time where other couples were going through something similar. So randomly I would get those bits of encouragement like, I'm not alone. Someone understand.
Yeah. So is that part of what inspired you to be so open about your journey?
100%. I've always been an open book when people ask me questions anyway. But when it came to this in particular, I know it has to be shared because of how alone I felt. And even sharing my process, I have come across other men who've gone through something similar. Even if they didn't go through male infertility, they're going through the process of IVF, and I can give them a bit of support in what they could potentially do to support their wives, helping them to add a bit of grace to their relationship.
That's really wonderful. And you said the phrase specifically open book. So can we talk about your book?
Absolutely. So, as of February 17th, I published my first book. This book is entitled Faith versus Fertility, a Black man's battle between belief and biology. So, it really showcases the inner turmoil I was going through between what I felt my body should naturally do and why I felt like God wasn't doing what I thought should be happening based on me doing it in the order I was told I should do it in. So I express in the book how I waited until marriage to even have sex. So in waiting, and now I can't do the thing that is supposed to happen naturally in your marriage, I was devastated. And I wanted to share my raw emotions in a way that gave people the understanding that it's okay to have them. So not only do I tell step by step what we went through, medications we took, surgeries I had, they're also journal entries because I am very big on mental health I'm also a certified Christian counselor. And I know the importance of journaling. So I journaled along this journey because some things I can't put that on my wife. Like my wife has her own journey in this, and she's not responsible for making me feel more secure. We have some shared experiences, but how I'm processing through this is not the same as how she's processing through. And some of the stuff is me also having to process through, hey, I don't like the way she's treating me. So I need to write that down somewhere. I can't go to you and say, hey, stop. Like you're going through this as well. And I was trying to be sensitive to that too. Because ultimately, although I'm going through my own stuff, you're the one that's going through all the needles. You're the one going through all the doctor's appointments. I don't know how that feels. And I can't hold you to how that feels. I will never know that experience. But you rude. You're mean. Let me write it down. Um,
Mm.
So it includes those bits of things as well. It includes prayers that I was saying to God to try to get me through. It includes some of the triumphs that occurred during that time as well. Because as I said, life continues to life. So promotions that may have occurred or job changes, church changes, coming into contact with other people of faith that I felt like I could confide in and brotherhood that I was able to build through this tough time. Um, it really details the journey itself to fertility.
How do you think your book has been received by your faith community?
Great question. So I've shared our story to the community a couple of times in a variety of ways, and it gives hope. It gives hope to the woman who wants to be pregnant but has been told it's too late. It gives hope to the man that may be in similar shoes. It gives hope to the family who has been trying and it just has not worked. It also shed light, and another portion of the book, the point is to shed light on health as well. Being able to go to get checked, being open to intervention, being open to diagnostics, and figuring out what it is. Because often I'm going to say we, but especially within the Black community, our faith trumps biology so much so we negate what's happening. We don't even know what's going on in our own body. We just pray it away. And I even saw that while I did my research, where I had an individual, for example, who, and this is in the article that I published, who is a diabetic and hypertension and going blind due to these conditions. But when I asked him to rate his own health, he said, excellent. Interesting. What is based on his faith in God, that's what he's supposed to say. You're deteriorating in front of me, but that's what you feel. Okay. I can do nothing but accept that, but that plays a role in why we do or do not seek healthcare in the first place. If I don't trust healthcare, because that's a lot of things that go on in the Black community as well. If I don't trust it and I haven't gotten good results from it from time to time or good interactions with healthcare providers, like you mentioned before, I'm going to shy away from it. So my book is done in a way to try to help individuals, especially within my community, embrace the healthcare that's out there, whether it's IVF, whether it's primary or preventative care, or mental health counseling. My wife and I went through counseling, individual as well as couples therapy. It's needed. You can always get a tune up. And just make sure if you're a person of faith like myself, make sure that the counselor is a person of faith as well. And it's infused in your treatment plan.
Yeah. Did you feel like some of these topics in your community were a bit taboo?
Absolutely. So I'd only known of one other couple at that time who'd gone the IVF route and was able to get twins from it. Um, we leaned on them a bit during this process, especially the first round, because they were familiar with what it entailed. And they're actually depicted in our book. No names were used, but they know who they are. That was the only point of reference I had. And outside of that, I'd never known anyone to go through IVF, so I didn't know who to ask anything of. And that in itself doesn't mean it's not happening. It's just I don't know them.
Mm.
Because since our process, I've come into contact with many other people who've had to go through IVF, and I've been able to help them along the way or tell them some things they can look out for. And it's interesting how that worked. I didn't have that example going through it, but afterwards, as we share, multiple people have popped up.
It's definitely a situation where like it just takes somebody opening that door, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've had a similar experience. I know this. Like all of these people come out of the woodwork. You're like, where
Hmm.
were you when I needed you?
Right.
It's
Right.
hard to start that conversation. You just need that one person to spark it.
Somebody has to make it okay.
Yep.
Somebody has to share that you're not weird, you're not alone. It is okay for you to feel what you feel, and what you're going through is not abnormal. It's your journey. And that's fine to have that journey. I'm here to encourage you along that journey that you're a part of. But not only is it taboo because we haven't heard of it as much, it's not exactly cost effective. So, depending on your financial situation, or the type of insurance, I should say, that you have, it may not be covered. So it might not be an option for you. So that's also a component. Mhm.
Yeah, access is difficult in our country right now.
100%. We, in the book, I mentioned this as well. At one point, we were double insured. So she had insurance through her job, I had insurance through mine, and I was still coming out of pocket, even for that ultrasound that I mentioned, because I had to get to my deductible first. So if I'm paying $1,500 just for an ultrasound, how am I getting to IVF? So, or even the genetic testing that we decided to do to see what our eggs look like. That's not free. That's about $5,000. And that is not going to be covered by your insurance. So taking those things into consideration, not everybody has the financial wherewithal to even go through what this process will entail. So that also might be a reason why it's a little rare to be shared within the Black community.
Like you said, the book is newly out. I'm really excited to kind of see what the larger reception is. I mean, like we just talked about, you need one person to open that door and start that conversation. I think this is going to have a huge impact, or I hope it's going to have a huge impact on a lot of guys so that they take those steps and they are proactive. And if, maybe they do find themselves talking about fertility treatment with their doctor and their partner, and they're not mentioning, oh, hey, we should get testing for you too. Like that they bring up those conversations and get that ball
Yes,
rolling a little bit earlier.
yes. I'm hopeful that this book brings about a number of things. I listed the goals of the book in the book, but it's also not just for men. It is with the major goal of shedding light in an area that's been dark for too long. So making sure that couples know this is not an abnormal journey. Trying to give the encouragement necessary throughout that journey. That one, you're not the only one going through this, but two, it could still happen regardless of what doctors are saying. And I think the book really tries to note that as well. There were many statements made along the process that were not encouraging. So giving the notion that you need to push through, giving the notion that, hey, especially when you're faith-based, hold on to that. Because there is one point in our journey, my wife and I met with a doctor, and the doctor looked at her and asked, have you ever considered donor sperm? While I was sitting there. And that was an extremely low moment for me again, because you've just counted me out of this situation automatically. And it was our first meeting.
Ooh.
So we didn't even have a report. You hadn't done like extensive testing on me on his own. We were going off of results I'd had in the past. But to say that would put me in the mindset of, okay, adoption, or okay, foster, or even in the book, I note this too. I knew how intensely my wife really wanted a kid. Not that I didn't want one, I did. But because of how grueling this process was, I'd released the thought that it had to come from me. I'd released the thought that it had to be birthed from my wife. Like I think at one point we even mentioned like surrogacy, all the things. We thought about all of it. But my wife wanted to be a part of the process of being pregnant. And any good God-fearing husband, you want to try to give your wife what they want. So imagine me feeling like I can't do it. So I even got to the point where I'm like, okay, well, if we have to do that, maybe I can ask my brother. Like that way it's still in the family. That was tough, but her desire trumped what I thought for myself. And it didn't take her long to answer the question. I'm just giving you all the thoughts that I had into 5 seconds of the back and forth. She immediately said, no, that's not an option. But
Mm.
all of that happened at one time. So if you have doctors telling you something over and over again, or you have people that aren't encouraging in that process, it can really put you in a mindset to think it'll never happen. And that is not the case. The book is to encourage. The book is to bring life. And even if that life is not a child from you, it is to make sure that you do what you need to do to resuscitate your marriage, resuscitate your relationship, and understand that you got with this person on purpose. Don't let this process end everything that you built.
I love that it seems in the book you touch on so many different possible outcomes as well
Mhm.
as roadblocks and things that were coming up at you. And it sounds like there's a big, strong core in the book of supporting your relationship, supporting your own mental health, the counseling. And I don't, sometimes I think we skip that part because we are task managing what's in front of
Mhm.
us. What's the next test? What's the next procedure? But foundationally, if we are thinking about our mental health and our relationships, it can help you be in a better place to take whatever next step you may have to take. So I think that it's really great that that has such a strong focus in your book.
Yes, because those are things I know aren't considered. I could have easily written a book about, hey, go get tested. Hey, these are my results. After you get these results, go get these meds, go to this doctor, and then after that, hopefully you get what you want from it. I can Google that, but I can't necessarily Google a journal entry. I can't Google how a man felt during this process, during a tug of war between HCG, how the woman felt during this process once it was unsuccessful. What emotional things did she go through? How did we restructure or even regroup after it was unsuccessful? How much time do you decide to take before you jump into something again? I can't Google those things. And my job as an author, I wanted to share that so that it becomes a bit more normalized, so that we make healthier choices as we go through the process.
I love that. Is there anything we haven't asked about that you would want to touch on?
The book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, ebooks as
And on our
well.
bookshop.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, we have a bookshop that's a bunch of resources for people who are navigating fertility treatment or adoption or surrogacy or just looking for, those real life examples. Like you were saying, you can Google the like medical side of things, but we have a book list of people who share their own experiences so you can kind of get into their mindset a little bit.
Oh, yes.
So,
Well, thank you for that. I think it's needed, especially for the men's group that you have. I would definitely encourage any man in particular to seek as many resources as possible, seek as many support groups as possible, and have the understanding that even if someone says you're quote unquote infertile, that word is really harsh. But infertile doesn't mean you're less than. Let's be honest, you didn't do anything to do that. I think that's something I had to wrestle with as well. This wasn't a consequence of anything. This wasn't because I made poor choices. This was just a circumstance that occurred that just isn't in alignment with what would be deemed normal. That is it. You do what you can to see if you can remedy that, but ultimately you're not less of a man because of it. How you show up every day in your relationship is what's important. How you show up to work, how you show up to your family, how you show up at your church. All of those things are what matter in the grand scheme of this process, and you won't be able to show up at your best if you're thinking less of yourself. That that won't get the job done.
I love that. And I agree. I hate the word infertile.
I know.
We try to talk about like if you're having fertility challenges, like
Uh-huh.
it's something that is happening. It's not assigning it as like a core value of yourself, which yeah.
Right. Right.
So you kind of just answered this, but is there anything else you would say to somebody who is just starting out trying to grow their family? They don't really know what's going to come next on their journey, but they're starting.
Sure. Be open. So I would say that, and what I mean by that is, even if your journey is an IVF, let's say you're literally deciding right now, all right, let's get pregnant. Be open to however long that takes, but understand that the love for your partner is what's paramount to all of this. Because making the decision to procreate isn't something that you would do lightly. You're deciding to do that with another person on purpose. So that relationship is the most important. So whatever that journey entails, keep that at the forefront. And in that openness, have the understanding that if you get to a point where you've been trying and trying and trying and you're not getting any result, get checked. Male and female. It's never just the female. I really want to venture to say that. There's always something a man can do. It's interesting because I watch or have watched a show called Thousand Pound Sisters before, and there's a snippet where she'll say, "There's things you can do." I say that all the time. There's stuff you can do to get yourself checked to make sure that you're not holding up your own process. You both made that decision. You have to be open to do what it takes on your end as well to get to that result. Now, that result could look different than when you started. For us in particular, I do believe a part of our process taking so long was intentional because it opened me up to the possibility of fostering. That wasn't something that was on my list to potentially do prior to this. And now we still plan to foster in the future. But again, that wasn't an option before. Nothing wasted. There's nothing wasted. Your process is your process for a reason. You may get pregnant the next month. That's great if that is the case. But if it's not the end of the world. There is still hope for you and your partner. It is important for you to just still be invested in the relationship and do what's necessary to figure out what will work best for you. And what works for you is what works for you. It doesn't matter what anybody else says, because there's going to be some people that don't believe in IVF. And that's probably because they don't know anything about it, or probably because they may be so faith conscious that they're not willing to venture into anything different. I'm not that type of person. I know that science was built for a reason. God gave us science, right? So be open to it. See if that's a thing because you might not even get through all the hormonal things. It could just be IUI. Like you just never know. So be open. That's my biggest point. Be open.
Yeah, I love that. Be open. So, what would you say to someone on how they can show up to someone in their life who might be going through a challenging time trying to build their family?
Absolutely. Be supportive. Know that you're a listening ear and that your job is to listen and offer encouragement. That's it. Um, and what I mean by that is don't take it upon yourself to do research and give it to that person. Don't require updates from those individuals regarding that process. They will update you in their timing because they're the ones going through it. It is rather important to make sure that you give the couple or the individual the space that they need to go through their process, and you're there to lend a helping hand if necessary. Something else to consider, this was a part of my own journey. It was not helpful for me at a certain point to hear, I'm praying for you. I'm going to send up a prayer for you. After 2 years of that, now I'm thinking, okay, thanks. God hears me. He heard me. Like he knows what I want. He understands this process better than I do. So in knowing where I am in this, you got to give me more than that. Prayer in itself can work magic, but be able to even ask the person, what else can I do? Is there any other way I can support you? Is there any other thing that you need in this moment that'll help take the weight off? Because it could be, hey, I'm so down, I can't cook. I'm so down, I need someone to watch the dog. Like, you never know. But what I do know is you cannot be in a position where you're expecting things from them and thinking, yep, I'm going to pray and we're good to go. 2 years of praying for the same thing is daunting. And we did it for nearly 4 before we got results. I know God heard me. So the added prayer is nice, but what else do you have? That's what I would say. Support
thank you
and
for
whatever
sharing
where
that.
they need. Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. This has been a really wonderful conversation. I mean, we've enjoyed really learning about your story, and I can't wait to read your book. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. But thank you so much for being so open about your own experiences and hopefully bringing a lot of comfort to people out there who might have thought that they were doing this in isolation beforehand.
Correct. That's the point. You're not alone. You're not an anomaly. You just don't know yet. There's support out here for you. There's encouragement for you. And you never know when your baby is around the corner.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week with more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website allpathsfb.org to learn more about our work. And please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support. And today we want to recognize and thank Fertility Centers of New England, a first fertility center. Your partnership is vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone who is struggling to grow their family. And to the entire All Paths community, thank you for being here. It's an honor to walk with you on your journey.